Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning. I'm very excited to introduce the topic. So you want to be a mediator. Now what? I know there are a lot of people in the community that are wondering what is mediation, and our wonderful panel of specialists will take you a little bit on a journey on what it means to be a mediator, and if you're already doing mediation, how to help you move forward in your professional career. So first of all, before we begin, we have a few housekeeping items. So I want to introduce our amazing staff, our director, Bouvier Yulin, and our top-notch administrator, Taisha Preston. And they're just going to talk a little bit about what to expect today. Bouvier?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Bouvier Yulin, and I'm the director for SCMA. Welcome to today's workshop. This workshop is being recorded, as you should know, and it'll be made available to everybody sometime next week. As you can tell, this workshop is in meeting format, which means we can see and hear you. So we ask that you please stay muted throughout the presentation. If you have any questions for our panelists, please type it in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to send me a chat or an email to info@scmediation.org. And now I will pass it back to Lucia.
Thank you, Bouvier. Thank you, Taisha. Like I said, they're the magic behind the Zoom meetings, so we are so grateful that they are here. Also, I want to mention our sponsor today, Simon Mediation. I want you to know that these webinars, classes, etc., we love when we have sponsors basically helping us with these events so that we can make them more available not only to our members, but also to the general public. So I'm going to introduce Dan Simon.
Thanks so much. So glad to be here. So glad to support this beautiful endeavor. I obviously am a person who has decided to be a mediator and has stuck it out for 23 years doing it. One of the keys to my having stayed motivated this whole time personally is that I've gotten excited in particular about the so-called transformative approach to mediation. If you're not aware of that, it was articulated in a book called The Promise of Mediation by Bush and Folger. And I have kind of really committed to that approach, which for me is the one that really focuses very precisely on supporting people in making their own choices. It really takes self-determination very seriously. I love it, and I hope you all will pursue careers as mediators. One thing you might choose to do to further your career is to join me for one of my trainings. I happen to be doing one of those in Santa Barbara, July 8th through 11th. I'll put the information about that in the chat, and would love to have you. I'm offering a special discount for SCMA people if you sign up today for it. In person, 4 days, 25 hours, inspiring, fun, in person with other humans again, finally. Would love to see some of you there. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan. We really appreciate your sponsorship, and we really appreciate your perspective on different forms of mediation, such as transformative. So thank you for being with us today. So I just want to mention, for those of you who are popping on, the panelists will have this blue background behind them. I know there's quite a few of us, and if you pulled up the many squares, this will help you to stay on track and know that we are the ones facilitating the program. I will be serving as your host and the moderator for the panel discussion. I just will give you a little bit of my background. I'm also a board member of SCMA and very proud to be part of this wonderful group. Also, I serve as a probate and family mediator, and I have my own private practice. So now I'm going to proceed to introduce our amazing panelists. I feel very fortunate that they all said yes. And I'm going to start first with Christina Kataoka. She is currently the interim, thank you. She is currently the interim executive director of the Asian Pacific American Dispute Resolution Center, also known as the APA DRC. She is a bilingual in Mandarin and English, mediator, trainer, speaker, and entrepreneur. Prior to passing the bar in California and receiving a master's degree in dispute resolution, Her career focused on managing international business negotiations for the private equity industry in Southwest China under Archer Communications, which is an LLC that was founded in 2015. Having moved to China as a Japanese Polish American, she has been building connections across all cultures since 1995. Thank you, Christina, for being with us. Next, we have Dr. Brian Jarrett. Maybe give a little hello for us. Thank you. Dr. Jarrett is a professor at California State University, Dominguez Hills. He is the chair of the Negotiation, Conflict Resolution, and Peace Building Department. He is a professional mediator, arbitrator in both the US and Canada. He holds a PhD in sociology. His interests include mediation, arbitration, dispute systems design, which is known as the ADSB, restorative justice practices, and therapeutic jurisprudence. In recent years, he originated work in integral mediation, which promotes interdisciplinary practices in mediation. Both his written work and classroom teachings, he works to bridge the theory and practice in the field of dispute resolution. Thank you, Brian, for being with us today. Next, we have Jason Harper. He is the founder of Harper Conflict Resolution, LLC. He specializes in education and employment mediation. He uses a collaborative approach. He is an alternative dispute resolution, ADR, consultant, conflict management coach, adjunct professor, and trainer. He provides mediation and conflict resolution services to over 50 school districts and 60 charter schools. He serves as the vice president of MC3, which is a certification organization that is professionalizing the field of mediation. He received his master's degree in negotiation, conflict resolution, and peace building, yes, from Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. He also received his mediation training at Loyola Law School Center for Conflict Resolution. Thank you so much, Jason, for being on our panel. Next, we have Susan Guthrie. Susan is a nationally recognized one of the top family law and mediation attorneys in the US, helping individuals and families navigate separation and divorce for over 30 years. She has partnered with mediation legend Forrest Woody Mostyn and has created the Mostyn Guthrie Academy, providing cutting-edge gold standard trainings for attorneys, mediators, and other professionals. A leading dispute resolution professional, she is honored to serve on the Executive Council of the American Bar Association, ABA. She is part of the section of dispute resolution as the membership officer and co-chair of the Mediation Committee and Annual Advanced Mediation Skills Institute. She serves on the board of the SEMA, and she is an international well-regarded in online mediation. As a matter of fact, I took the class. More than 17,000 people have benefited from her program. Thank you so much, Susan, for being on the panel. And last but definitely not least is Mark Lemke. He is a full-time neutral specializing in employment, personal injury, and real estate disputes. Currently, he serves as the 2020 president of the SCMA, and we're so thrilled with that. He is a graduate of the SCMA mentorship program, MC3 certified since 2019, and he's mediated over 2,500 cases to date. He built his private practice from scratch. He graduated from the USC Law School and has an LLM in dispute resolution from the Strout Institute at Pepperdine Law School. He was awarded fellowship from the California State Bar Alliance. He's co-president of the LGBTQ Lawyers LA. He's also a volunteer judge at the LA County Superior Court, assisting in judicial settlement offices. He's a member of the AAA Employment and Commercial Mediation Panels, and he serves on panels for the U.S. District Court, for the California Courts of Appeal, the EEOC, the DFEH, and many others. And we're really privileged to have Mark part of the panel. Thank you. All right, now to get into the meaty part, the panel discussion. So once again, as Bouvier asked, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to place them in the chat. We will allow you the opportunity that after each speaker to go ahead and have questions for that speaker at that time. And Bouvier will read those out to us, and the panel will go ahead and answer those questions. So let's get started. The first speaker is Christina Kataoka. She will talk a little bit about what it means to be in a DERPA classroom program or workshop, as well as what it looks like to volunteer. Christina.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, Lucia, for that wonderful and warm introduction. It is so incredible to see everyone's faces here. In particular, I'd like to give a shout out to 3 of our APA DRC volunteers that I see on the screen today who's here with us. One is Fernanda, our incredible volunteer, as well as Stephanie and Andressa. Thank you very much for being here. We can't do the work that we do without you. And on that note, I guess I'm really stunned at everyone who's here, because for those of you who are already mediating, thank you so much for continuing to do this work. It is something that gets in your bones and in every fiber of your being, and it's incredible that you stick it out no matter what, and thank you. And for those of you who are new to mediation and thinking about being a mediator, congratulations, your life is about to change. And frankly, I envy you, because that moment when you first get connected to mediation and peacemaking is such an incredible feeling. And I'll never forget what it was like when I got the bite. So, or the itch, whatever it is. So thank you so much for being here. In terms of what we do, so APA DRC stands for Asian Pacific American Dispute Resolution Center. We are funded by LA County through their Dispute Resolutions Programs Act. You might have heard Lucia just now mention this word DERPA, which is really fun to say. That stands for DRPA, Dispute Resolutions Programs Act. So this was the act in the 80s that actually allowed courts to raise their filing fees by as much as $8 a case. And that doesn't sound like a lot, because it's not. And well, I should preface that it was a lot back then. It's no longer a lot. And that amount of money goes to organizations that, like ours, that are recognized by LA County's Dispute Resolutions Programs Act as community mediation centers, programs that provide mediation training. It's a 25-hour minimum training that's provided, and afterwards you're provided with a certificate of completion, which allows you to mediate in California and be, how should I say it, and qualify under the rule of confidentiality. I suppose I might frame it that way. And that's really important, because it means that everything that's said in the mediation process is confidential, and you cannot be called to testify in court as a witness as to what was said during the settlement agreement or conference, whatever you want to call it, essentially this mediation process. Let's see, we have, at the APA DRC in particular, we have a tiered volunteer opportunity. That means that you start with a basic mediation training. Once you've completed that, you have the opportunity to volunteer with us. We do require 160 hours, and that's really a chance for you to cut your teeth, right? Get all of your skills to help you really learn to be a good, amazing mediator. That said, we are certainly not the only organization in this field that does this. There are a total of 13 organizations that are DERPA funded, or funded by LA County, I should say. And we all provide a basic mediation training, and it's an incredible honor and privilege to be able to work with everyone in this field. So thank you very much. Lucia, do you have
Perfect.
any further questions?
Please feel free to place those in the chat. If you're interested in volunteer opportunities, just like Christina said, it's the best way to just jump in and really hone on your skills. And again, just go ahead and place those in the chat. As she mentioned, there's numerous organizations, and that her particular organization has so many opportunities for you to go in and basically explore the opportunity to be a mediator. Go ahead, Bouvier, you may read the questions for us.
I suppose I should add really quickly, I did see a question in the chat asking if there's a link where you can sign up to volunteer. Yes, there is. I will send that in the chat. And also, some of you may be wondering, well, what do these cases look like? So I suppose I should give you an overview. As a community mediation center, we handle all kinds of cases that are from the community. That means that they may have a small dollar value, so it may not be worth it to go directly to court because court filing fees itself might be more than what the dispute is actually valued at. Another issue sometimes is that there may not be a harm under the law. For example, if I lie to you, you might feel betrayed, but that lie is certainly not illegal, I hope anyway. So no fraud here, to make it, I guess, a small but also cliche lawyer joke. So when that's the case, you might feel harmed, but you don't have any legal recourse. So what does that mean? How can you resolve that conflict, resolve that dispute? Well, you can go to mediation, because in mediation, the cases that we can handle at a community mediation center don't necessarily have to be litigated. And that's a really key distinction that I'd like to make now to kind of set the scene for some of our panelists coming up. So we handle neighbor-neighbor cases, landlord-tenant cases, some family disputes, for example, parents and grandparents not getting along, things like that, or parents and children, or spouses occasionally. We also have consumer merchant cases. So for example, if you buy something and you're super unhappy about it, or we see a lot of auto body repair shop disputes where your car was repaired and you're not satisfied, that's something that we handle as well. So there's all kinds of different cases. I would say an important thing to note is that these cases, when the money is small, it's never about the money. It's always about something else. And that's why it's a really good starting place for your career as a mediator, because it really gives you the chance to learn how people react in conflict. On that note, I am done. Thank you very much.
Christina, there's actually also another question here.
Yes.
Do you specialize in APA clients?
I'm so glad you asked that. Yes, we do. So at the Asian Pacific American Dispute Resolution Center, one of our, I suppose, claims to fame is that we try and provide mediation services and conflict resolution services. So not just mediation, but also other forms of ADR to parties in their native language as well as culture whenever appropriate. That said, everyone at our organization is absolutely 100% welcome. You don't have to be a member of the API community in order to approach us or ask us for help.
Great. And
So
then
that's a great question.
also another question we have here from Anita Porter. Regarding the training and confidentiality, is this the only training that grants confidentiality recognized by the state?
That's a great question. So in terms of LA County, it's slightly different, meaning LA County specifically recognizes a number of conflict resolution, or I'm sorry, I misspoke, community mediation centers that provide basic mediation training. That gives you that initial certificate of completion. That said, there are a number of other organizations out there that provide incredible trainings, and that includes our wonderful Susan Guthrie's training.
Thank you. And then Crystal Williams asked, is there somewhere we can find a list of other organizations that provide volunteer opportunities? And actually, Crystal, if you go on our website, On our homepage, you will find a drop down for community organizations, and we have the list of the DERPA organizations there. And then let me see if there's, and I think that's it. Are there any more questions?
I think there's a couple of little shout outs. I
Yes.
see one from Jason Harper that says APA DRC is an amazing place to get experience at a mediator. And he put up the website. So there's a little shout out for you, Christina. And from Wendy, APA DRC also has merchandise and does great things in the community. So take a peek at that. And we have another thank you. So thank you so much, Christina. And again, if you want further information, take a peek at their website. So maybe you can kindly type that into the chat. If you haven't already, I apologize. So people can get more information about you. Thank you. All right. Yes, you're welcome to quietly clap. That's good. Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Dr. Brian Jarrett, and he's going to talk a little bit about advanced degrees. Maybe you want to take your mediation practice to the next level and get a master's. So go ahead, Brian, and share with the group.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming on a Saturday morning. I appreciate this very much. A quick shout out. I just want to say, Christina, we actually have students going to your program. You're doing great things. The program is doing great things. And excuse me, people are really very pleased with what's going on there. So just from the university perspective, just a quick connection. I want to thank also Lucia, your work here, Mark, Taisha and Bouvier, and also Simon Mediation, a quick shout out. So thank you very much for this opportunity for us all today. What I would like to say very quickly up front is this is it's actually Peter Adler made an argument. He's at the University of Hawaii and does all kinds of land use mediation, like the telescopes, and the Mauna Kea and all this stuff. He's an amazing guy. He made a point about the field of mediation that really took me a few years to really connect with. And it was that it's actually a bundle of skills. It's a number of skills. It's not one skill. It's not one thing. It's not, people always trying to hone it into one thing particularly. Even the approaches to mediation, transformative, narrative, evaluative, facilitative, and on. It's a set of skills and approaches. And so Peter made that point, and I think it's sociological. He actually has a sociology background too. It's a sociological point that this is an emerging profession with different applications and different practices, and it's connected to a host of practices. So what we try to do with our students, and myself included, I mean, I'll tell you, this is my own recipe as well. We try to get people to understand and think about the different practices that connect with mediation, and that to approach mediation from the approach that there are a number of ways to do mediation. There's not one size fits all. And so, just quickly, there's several approaches to mediation I've mentioned. There's transformative dialogue. It's an emerging field. Renata Valerie at our school is out in Antelope Valley doing that with the sheriff's department. They just changed the rules around policing, improving policing, the recent stuff going on. That's transformative dialogue. It's a very mediated process, but it's with larger groups. There's work there to be done. There's lots of work. People are looking for people to do this work. There's restorative practices in general, and that is working with young people, for example, in the juvenile justice system, helping them into diversion programs, into mediation types of programs. There's a number of them, and every state has a set of different programs. It's also true that schools now are adopting and getting into the restorative side, school principals and so forth. There's lots of opportunities there. It's how you approach and market yourself in these different areas. And that we'll talk about in a sec, but just recognize there are a number of different practices. Even arbitration is not one thing. There's different types of arbitration and binding, non-binding, advisory, different sectors of practice. You have to pull back from just, it's got to be this one, this meeting, pull back and look at the whole field is my advice. There's fact-finding, early neutral evaluation, ombudsman work. There are a lot of ombudsmen around the country. There's both the statutory ombudsman, they're appointed. And in those offices, you'll have assistant the ombudsman. They're writing They're doing investigations, they're doing mediations, they're doing all kinds of things in those offices. They're large offices, and there's points of entry into this work through the Ombudsman Office. Dispute systems design, this is designing programs for organizations, for the courts, for tribal nation, for example, which I've been connected to some of these things, companies. So that's, again, that's another skill set and practice that is emerging as a thing you can charge for and become as a consultant with, which is connected to mediation. But it's not this thing of me, oh, I've got to have two people in a room and it looks like this, right? Okay, so program evaluation. People are running mediation programs, but they need somebody to give them a report, what's working, what's not working, appreciative inquiry, how can it be improved? These things are going well, but how can you improve this in order, if you're getting a grant funding, for example. I know a number of tribes in Alaska, for example, they're running dispute resolution programs. I was up there for a while, and they really need people to, they're looking for people to partner, to come in and evaluate programs. Well, that's connected to this work too. So, okay, and coaching, the biggest one I'm seeing now is the emergence of coaching as a field. And perhaps we've got a professor here today, might even speak, Dr. Kara Delachopa from our school, is now developing coursework on coaching. Why? Because it's lucrative. There's money involved in coaching people. Think about collaborative law jurisdictions, the family situation, where you have people now coming in as coaches to help those parties. I recently spoke to Jay Damiani at the University of Sao Paulo. He runs the global, he's the director of the Global Center for Peace there. And he was telling me recently, even international commercial arbitration, they're now hiring coaches in there. So that's a shift in practice. So we're seeing a lot of shifts here in practice and emergent professions coming out now. So this is the sociology aspect. We're seeing the emerging of professions. Yes, they're early on. They're just developing, but they're a bundle of skills. And so the challenge to you is to figure out what your personality and who you are and how you can connect to those different practices and which ones speak to you more than others. And you'll find that there's some things just connect with you more personality wise. And you really want to pay attention to that because that's where you'll do well. Our program is a master's program, just to shift to the program quickly. It's a master's program. It's largely online. We do some on campus, but we try to offer it online so that people can come in from different places. With ODR now, we found the online dispute resolution, we're finding that, that's actually been a good thing because now the courts are now online, a number of jurisdictions, and people are now having to learn online skills. So that's something to think about as well. We run a pracademic model. We're not a theory-based, we have a master's, but we're not simply theory. And a lot of standard master's programs, they're often theory. We're practitioner focused. And that makes it much more useful because you're actually doing case study. You're actually delving into, particular case analysis and so forth, and how you do something, and we confront people with different fact patterns they have to figure out. So our program focuses on, I would say, with a few things that really make it stand out, I would say would be the professional ethics. We're really on top of the professional ethics, and we really bring that up in the students. Intercultural understanding. A lot of the professors are really attempting to have people understand a lot of the disputes that involve cultural kind of differences and so forth. So we're really tapping that and have done for a long time. I should say quickly, I don't know, I'm just trying to run through quick because we don't have a lot of time, but basically we have some of the professors. We have the ombudsman from Tennessee. We have Gerald Pepika, who is the vice president of the National Ombudsman Association. He teaches our ombudsman course, for example. Renata Valerie, who's doing community mediation, was the former president of the Community Mediation Association. She is running our mediation course, and she's running the transformative dialogue work right now as well. Ambassador Steve Rhodes is leading in our international diplomacy area, getting students connected to foreign service and how that works. We have, I do restorative practices. Abdul Isa, who's one of our professors, works in schools and does restorative practices. We have Pamela Kreiser, who's doing dispute systems design, organizational consulting, and program evaluation, teaching people how to do program evaluation. And we'll have, lastly, we have these are just a few, but Renee Castro and John Swarbrick are leading our program in the labor mediation, labor arbitration area, and really developing that out and building it out for the students so that they have the professional networks. So what I would say, looking at just a few of these examples of our professors and what they're teaching in the areas, is it's very important to develop the professional ethics through these professors and professional contacts. So if you go into private practice, you need professional network connections, and you've got to start that early on. In our program, we teach people how to do that. They do it through our community. Many of the people in our program have, gone on into the future, and they're looking back now, maintain communities, learning communities, and practice communities. They have done that through our professors, through the professionalization of the field. So what I'd also say is that it's a tough field. Like, this is a competitive field, and it's because it's emergent. There's a lot of uncertainties in the field. So it's important to be entrepreneurial. If you're going to be in private practice, you have to really be entrepreneurial and learn how to graciously promote yourself. And this is something that's a bit of an art. And so we teach that in the program. We really have an emphasis on that, because you need to find what you're about and your practice, what you value, and then connect that to the work that the people are doing, the clients have. So you want to make those connections through understanding yourself, and then how you can promote your own work from your own interests. And that is it's a bit of an art. We teach also just the basics, how to create a contract, a service contract, how to, advertise and promote yourself, how to work with ethics codes, and to not run afoul of the law on where you can with these sets of practices. I would say that in order to promote yourself also, what we really do is we encourage people to go to conferences. You have to go to conferences, because that's where you meet the other people that you'll connect with. And you want to give talks at conferences. It's, you put yourself on the list, go submit an abstract, and get yourself onto the conference speaker panels, because then people will see that you're serious about this area because you're contributing to that area. It's very important also to write in the area. So even mediate.com is a website, and that's a terrific website where you can get a journal article on there. It doesn't have to be that long. And they're quite generous and inclusive, trying to get articles in on various aspects of mediation. So look for opportunities for publishing your work, because then people will see that, oh yeah, this person's serious about this. And, you sort of gain a presence or an identity to what you're doing. So that's very important. Now, the other thing too is you also want to look to existing organizations and communities, the connections you already have, because you can actually build your practice inside an organization, or with the help of a community, or connecting to a community. And that's how you can build up the clientele. So it's word of mouth. A lot of this industry is word of mouth. And that's why you want to really be, connecting to people in areas that you're really excited about, and that they understand that you're a contributor to that area. I'd say the last thing is that you really want to be, develop a mindfulness practice, some kind of mindfulness practice. Now that can be whatever that is, tailored to your own, values, interests, and so forth. But what I mean by that is, when you've done cases, you want the ability to walk away and have some space, like going walking, cycling, doing martial arts, dance, painting, or being in nature. You need a space. You need to create a space, because this is very creative work. So you need a space where you can reflect back on what worked, what didn't work, and how you're doing things. And to allow yourself that creative space is really useful, because then you are able to, improve and build on your practice and so forth. So that is, in a nutshell, my thoughts on the matter. Our program is a good one. We have a terrific bunch of practitioner instructors. They're instructors, but they're also practitioners first. And so welcome anybody to talk about the program and and I'll introduce you to the various folks. We're on the top 10 lists because across the country, we make the top 10 lists. We've got a bunch and we can send them to you if you want, precisely because we're practice focused. And I would say that's it in a nutshell. And hello to everybody, and Jason in particular, and good to see everybody. All right, questions or comments?
Well, first of all, thank you, Brian, so much for that. And I want to encourage everybody to check out his master's program. It's amazing. And as you can see, some of our members of SCMA went through that program. And I happen to know some of my colleagues that I worked with in Central California also attended your program. So it's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
So questions, Bouvier.
Sure. So Dr. Jarrett, I think some people may have missed what school or program are you with?
Okay. Good as the person presenting the program. Okay, so I am, we are at the Cal State University Dominguez Hills, about 14 miles south of the LAX airport in the South Bay. It's Cal State University Dominguez Hills. And we have the NCRP is our program. It's called NCRP for short, Program on Negotiation, Conflict Resolution, Peace Building. And we are, we've been running since about 81 or 82. It's a long-standing program, and I'm pleased and privileged to be part of it. It's really terrific.
Thank you. Also, it looks like this person has volunteered for the LACSC mediation panel years ago when the court was administering that program. Are any SoCal courts still offering this program that you know of?
No, I mean, I don't. I'm sorry. I have to talk more about that. I will say this about court programs. That's, by the way, my message today would be there's mediation going on. It's not just in courts. And people sometimes get overly fixated with courts, and they think, oh, I'll volunteer, and they fall into a volunteer kind of black hole where they're just doing volunteering. You got to be careful about that. What you want is to get some volunteer experience with the courts, but then you want to move on to your professional work where you're paid for your work. And you should be paid for your work. It's hard work, and it's a valuable service to people. So always insist when you do work, even if you discount your bill, you can do that. You issue a bill and you discount it, right? You say, okay, I would have charged that, but I always do that because it lets people know that there's value to that service. So it's not just something you're doing, as a hobby. So generally with court programs, be careful because there are court programs, but that's just a little bit there, tip of the iceberg. There are many different opportunities for this work, often outside of the court setting.
Great. And then we have here from Jackie N. How much of an additional benefit should a California law graduate unlicensed consider a master's program in ADR, especially one that is practitioner focused?
Sorry, so that question was, if you're not a lawyer?
It says, how much of an additional benefit should a California law graduate unlicensed?
Unlicensed, okay, got it.
Yes.
I've done the JD, but I didn't write the bar exam, or did it, and apparently California is a nightmare. I did the British Columbia bar exam, and I did the Washington State bar exam. I'm never going to do another one. They're awful, but okay. So the long and short of it is that because it's kind of a niche area, it is a good idea because you can actually, I've just mentioned all those different practices. You can, a lot of the lawyer skills don't give you those practices. They're a different set of skills. And so it used to be a lot of the lawyers got the professional capital out of being a lawyer to say, oh, I'm a mediator, I'm doing this, or, but it's changing. The profession is changing dramatically because people are seeing that oftentimes the person who's doing that work, for example, a labor relations person in the labor area, they can arbitrate, mediate cases better than lawyers because they have the skill sets. The lawyers often don't. Even though the lawyers know the law very well, those labor relations practitioners are better. See, so be careful on, I've got to be a lawyer. That's the only way I'm going to do this. No, I always say Vince Reddy is the #1 mediator arbitrator in Canada. He is not a lawyer. He's #1. You can't go on his calendar. And he was trying to retire. I was talking on the plane not so long ago. He said, I'm trying to retire, Brian, but they won't let him retire. So, because he's in demand. He's not a lawyer. So I would say to people who, and particularly if you have lawyer training, you've done a JD or some part in training law school, this is an excellent connection and bridge opportunity. of course, you have to do further training in these practice areas. And whatever program you do, ours is just to plug the program. It's about 11 grand total for the masters, but you know, they vary, and that's very good, by the way. That's extremely good for the price. But the state supported, right? State sponsored, because we're a state school. But I would say whatever program you do, it is worth it, because you're doing about a year and a half in training. So there's Pepperdine, there's USC. Jason is building the USC program. There's University of Missouri's got a great program. Salisbury University, Maryland is great. You know, there's a number. York in Canada is good. There's the Justice Institute in BC. There are these programs that are sort of emerging. So check them out, not just ours, but all the programs. And we're all supporting each other. You know, it's the emergence of the profession we're interested in overall.
One more comment to the group. We do have a panelist that will talk a little bit more in detail about for attorneys who are interested in doing mediation. So for those of you who want a little more in-depth detail, again, hang tight. We have a panelist that will talk to that issue in a little more depth. Thank you so much, Brian. We really appreciate you on the panel.
Good comment from Crystal. Yeah, I see that. You taught Apple, so that's really cool. Full circle.
Nice, very nice.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Our next panelist is Jason Harper. He's going to talk about the importance of joining professional organizations. But Jason, I'm going to add a little spin to you, since Brian was talking about the importance in schools. And as you might have all heard from his bio, he's been very proactive in that. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well, training our future mediators.
Oh, well, I mean, well, first off, I want to say thank you to SCMA for having me as a part of this panel, and to be surrounded by such great folks. You know, folks like Susan Guthrie and Dr. Jarrett and Christina Kataoka and Mark Lemke. You know, it's an honor and a privilege. And, you know, as the 2017 president of SCMA, it's always good to see the organization moving in a positive direction. So yeah, so thank you very much. And Lucia, you're doing a great job moderating this whole operation. So I appreciate it, and kudos to you. And hello to everybody and all of the audience here for this program. To speak to a little bit of, you know, the work that I do with, you know, schools and you know, and training, you know, students to be mediators. It's a perfect segue. I was going to bring this up in a second, but there is an organization that's a sister organization of SCMA, and it's called Kids Managing Conflict. I had a hand in creating and branding that particular organization, and it's appropriate that Madeline Wall, the main administrator for that organization, is here in the audience. And so, you know, it's an organization that really promotes and supports peer mediation programs and conflict resolution programs in the K through 12 school system. And they do amazing work, and their website is www.kidsmanagingconflict.org. If you have any questions, feel free. I'll put it in the chat, or Madeline, if you could put that in the chat, that would be fantastic. It's a great organization to support and be a part of and help out. And that's essentially what I'm going to talk about this during our time together. But to kind of piggyback and kind of link together a few of the things that we've heard so far. One of the things that I like to do when I talk about things like this is to use the roadmap approach, right? So for those of you that are you know, tuning into this, you've either gotten your first mediation training or you're considering getting your training. And to Christina Kataoka's you know, statement, congratulations on both in both aspects, because you know, you're embarking on quite the journey. And so with that in mind, you know, there's a number of things that go on. And just speaking to my own personal experience, I've got my first training, and then I immediately was just, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It hit me like a bolt of lightning. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life. This is my calling. And when I realized that, I wanted to learn everything that I could. And so I cut my teeth volunteering. I was a volunteer mediator for about a year and change with the LA County Bar Association at that time. But during that time, I learned about the APA DRC, and they do amazing work. I would absolutely recommend that you check them out, check their website out, and possibly volunteer. And that's where, to Dr. Jarrett's point earlier, you learn about yourself, right? You learn about the type of mediation that you want to do, and almost just as importantly, the type you don't want to do, that you don't have the stomach for. And that's important as well. And so, you learn all of those things while you're volunteering, while you're building your confidence up, and to the point where you can go to a person and say, hey, I mediate and this is what I charge, and be able to do it with a straight face and be confident about it. That's why you volunteer. That's why you get your experience, and it's invaluable. But then to go to Dr. Jarrett and the master's program at Cal State Dominguez Hills, as a graduate of that program, I was immediately drawn to it from a course standpoint. All of the different subjects that they cover, you come out a much better mediator, a more knowledgeable mediator. And one of the things that I was told and taught earlier in life is that if you feel as though you have a calling, if you feel as though you have a calling to do something, you want to learn all that you can to do it well. And a great place to do that is at Cal State Dominguez Hills with the Negotiation, Conflict Resolution, and Peace Building program at the DH. So Dr. Jarrett, I want to give you kudos for that program. It's amazing. It's changing lives, and not just the students, but the community as well. So I want to give you kudos for that as well. So with that in mind, you've gotten your mediation training. You're now volunteering, you're cutting your teeth, you're getting your experience, and you're building your confidence, which is important. You are considering embarking on a master's program potentially, because again, if you have a calling, you want to learn all you can to do it well. What I'm going to talk with you, for the next couple of moments is about the next step, which is to, and something that Dr. Jarrett brought up a little while ago, we touched on a little bit, and I'm going to expand on that, is joining professional organizations. And I'm having a hard time thinking of which one you might want to join on an SCMA program. But what do you know? It's the Southern California Mediation Association, SCMA. It's a great organization, and I'll talk to you about it just from my standpoint. I was cutting my teeth, getting my volunteer mediation experience going. And during that time, I was able to observe a mediation, which is a very valuable exercise, being able to watch a mediation. And the mediation that I watched, the mediator, her name is Shazi Rastigar. Her name is Shazi Rastigar, amazing, former board member of SCMA. And she told me, hey, have you considered SCMA? Have you heard about it? And I said, I've heard about it vaguely, but nothing concrete. And she said, you know what, here, come on, and you're going to be my personal guest. There's an employment mediation event that's happening in Century City. Let's go. And so I went, and it just opened my whole mind about just what is possible and the community that's out there. And that's where we're going to start. The two reasons why you would join a professional organization is, one, to find a community and mentors, extremely important. And then the second is to attach yourself to something larger. So from the first standpoint, finding community, to be around like-minded individuals that have the same interests from a professional and maybe even personal standpoint is completely invaluable just in life in general. But from a professional standpoint, it's amazing. And SCMA does an amazing job with cultivating that community, and they do it through a number of different ways. One of the ways is through professional development groups. Now, this is a program that's been years in practice through SCMA, where you have a bunch of folks, whether it's in a geographical area or particularly in the age of online communication, if it's more practice related, you have the opportunity to go in and be surrounded by people that are in the same line of work, which can be a very lonely profession, by the way. You're surrounded by people within the same line of work, within the same practice, and you can share your stories with each other. You can talk through tips, you can gain advice, you can gain examples that you can apply to your own personal practice and take it to the next level. Personally, I've gone through professional development groups, or study groups, as they used to be called way back in the day. And through those professional development groups, I have joined strategy groups, which is an even smaller subgroup within a professional development group, where I've attained friends that I will have for life. And what we do is, after a professional development group, what we would do is we'd go to a restaurant and sit down and just talk through everything that we had learned and how we're going to apply it in our practice the next day. And that made us all better. And we were coming from different practices, but it was those same skills, those enveloping skills that that really made us that much better. And then the other thing that that happens from a community standpoint, to Dr. Jarrett's point that he brought up earlier, was the annual conference. And it's an amazing event. It's a full day, and now it's almost 2 days if you count the kickoff dinner. And it's an opportunity for you to meet not just other mediators, but you can meet different organizations and learn about them and get more experience and learn about the different areas that the different organizations cover within the field of dispute resolution. And so that's a perfect opportunity for you to kind of expand your mind, develop some new skills, learn some new skills, and be able to get yourself involved with other organizations. Now, the other reason why you would like to join SCMA or any other professional organization is to find mentors. I was privileged enough and lucky enough and blessed enough to have a number of mentors during my journey, one of which was the past president of SCMA, Wendy Kramer. And she was one who taught me, not just about mediation, but about the business of mediation, which is very important. It was her, it was a lady by the name of Therese White, and a bunch of other amazing women, amazing women who were in leadership, who taught me how to lead and taught me how to become a better business person within the field of mediation. And that's important. That's something that you don't really get taught in the basic mediation training. That's a separate issue that you have to learn. And hopefully there's a little bit of trial and error with everything, but hopefully you can find those mentors and find those champions within these professional organizations that can take you under their wing, that can talk you through the trials and tribulations that that are a part of being an entrepreneur, having a private practice, standing on your own, if you will. And so, and what SCMA has done is they have, really taken that and made it an entire program. And they have a mentorship program that is very valuable. We have a current president that has gone through that mentorship program, as well as a few past presidents as well. And it's extremely valuable. You get to learn, you get to sit under the learning tree of established mediators in the field. And you're able to, talk about advertising. You're able to talk about a business plan. You're able to talk about establishing a website. You're able to talk about, online dispute resolution, right? And we have a person on the panel, Susan Guthrie, who is the one on that. So feel free to reach out to her if you have any questions on that front, or go to her trainings more specifically. But those are the types of mentorships and champions that you will find in SCMA. There is a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of advice that you can gain from an organization such as this. So that's from a personal, mediation, establishing your practice and getting yourself better standpoint. The other reason to join SCMA and other professional organizations is to attach yourself to something larger. When you break into the field and you've gotten your mediation training and you're doing your volunteering and you're learning about mediation, facts only, you're not that good. You're not that good, and people don't know you, right? So you're not that good, so you want to get the volunteering experience to make yourself better. But the other side is people don't know who you are. And you can call a bunch of organizations up and say, hey, I'm a mediator, and I think I'm pretty good. I've volunteered and I've done my thing, and now I think I'd like to charge money for what it is that I'm doing. And the speed in which people will hang up on you is just amazing. It's very quick. I know this from personal experience, but it's a different operation altogether. It's a different experience altogether when you are not just, Jason Harper, or you're not just Christina Kataoka. You are Jason Harper with SCMA, or you're Christina Kataoka with the APA DRC. You've attached your name to something larger. And so with that, your name value has increased. And so how do you do that? You get involved with these organizations. You get involved with SCMA. You join committees, absolutely join committees. When I broke into SCMA, I joined 2 committees. I joined the communications committee and the programs committee, right? And with that experience, I was able to help develop the SCMA website, and I was able to help develop and put on programs for SCMA. Now, that was great just for my personal experience in leadership as I moved along, but from increasing my name value standpoint, especially from a programs committee standpoint, I was able to reach out to a number of organizations, and now these organizations knew who I was because of my affiliation with SCMA and the fact that I was helping coordinate events with them. And now they're getting to know who I am. I wasn't able to get in the door with just my name, but my name attached with SCMA got me into the room. And once I got in the room, I like my chances, right? I can help you understand who I am and why I'm valuable and why I can be valuable to your particular operation. And that's precisely what happened. And so, from a increasing your name value standpoint, you want to get involved with these organizations. And obviously, as you move forward with getting involved, potentially it can lead to leadership opportunities. And as I said a second ago, I was blessed and fortunate enough to be the 2017 president of SCMA. And while I was extremely proud of that, and it was quite the journey in and of itself, what it also did was it increased my name value on a national level. And because SCMA is highly recognized and highly esteemed across the country. And so as president of SCMA, I was a beneficiary of that particular notoriety. And so, that just built my name that much more. And now it's to a point where I don't necessarily need to attach myself to SCMA. My name stands alone on itself. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and a lot of bettering yourself that goes into that. And that's another reason why you want to join potentially the master's program at the Dominguez Hills to make yourself a better mediator. Because once you get in the room, it's on you and your skills to keep you there. Right. And so in order to do that, you have to know all you can, so you do it well. So that is attaching yourself to something larger. And it's also, and it's not all just, making it about yourself. It's also an opportunity to give back. Right. And so, when you find yourself in a calling that has provided so much for you, like it did for me, I have a need to give back and to pay it forward. And I've managed to do that, and you can manage to do that through a number of organizations, obviously through SCMA. And this is an organization that provides community for other mediators. So you be that community for those other mediators. That's important. You build confidence in the other mediators, and confidence is contagious. And people feel better knowing that they have someone like you that is there in the same boat, with the same mission, and it builds community, and it's great. But there are other organizations. SCMA has two sister organizations. I mentioned this first one a second ago. That's Kids Managing Conflict. Kids Managing Conflict is an organization that, again, is about promoting and supporting peer mediation programs in the K through 12 schools. It is an amazing operation. It's an amazing organization, and they need volunteers. They need your help. And so Madeline Wall, who was the lead administrator for KMC, she put the link in the chat. So feel free to take a look at that, www.kidsmanagingconflict.org. But then there's another organization that's a sister organization of SCMA that I also had a hand in putting together and running. And that's MC3. MC3 stands for the Mediation Certification Consortium of California. And it's an amazing organization. It's huge. It's becoming more nationwide. People are adopting it in many different states. I believe that we're at about 6 now. But what is it? And what is it about? Now, this is an organization and initiative to professionalize the field of mediation. A few of the things that I heard during my time as president is, hey, we don't get the respect we deserve as mediators. I deserve just as much respect for my work as legal counsel does, because I'm just as professional, right? So that's one thing that I heard during my time as SCMA president. Another thing that I heard as SCMA president was, I'm tired of everyone expecting us to give our services away for free, right? Now, there's a connection there. But then there's more. So when I was president, I also heard this, the common experience in small claims court and elsewhere. And disputants can't generally describe what a mediator does without being supplied an explanation, right? And that's a huge problem in our field. But juxtapose that with the fact that they can describe in great detail what an accountant does, what an attorney does, what a nurse does, what a teacher does. That tells us something. And so that's what MC3 is all about. MC3 is trying to professionalize the field and create and really name ourselves. Because if we don't, another organization or another body will name it for us. And I have a number of examples for that I won't have time to get into, but that is another conversation for another day. But these things are connected. And so what is MC3 trying to do? Well, I mean, they're trying to really look into the hallmarks of a formalized profession and provide that for mediators. So for one, education, often linked to a degree, that's important, but education from the standpoint of mediation training, absolutely important. A binding ethics code, that's something that a formalized profession has. And that's something that we also have, but we need to recognize it and firm it that much more. It's self-governing. Formalized professions are self-governing, and we need to do that in order to weed out the non-quality practitioners. There's continuing education that is a part of a formalized profession, and we want to pursue that as well. And a test of some sort, some type of bar that lets people know, and it's a way to demonstrate the fact that you do have a basic knowledge of mediation skills. And currently, mediation does not require any of those things, but other professions have all of those. They have all of those hallmarks, and the purpose behind that is to provide quality assurance to the general public. And so MC3's proposition is that establishing more quality assurance in mediation will ultimately provide more respect for mediators, as well as provide the public more information to pave the way for direct interaction, right? We want the general public to be able to call a mediator immediately, just like they would call an attorney. And that's really the mission of MC3. And so for more information, I'll put it in the chat, but www.mc3certified.org is the website there. And really, when I think about just professionalizing the field, and when I think about what MC3 is doing, for those of you that are starting out your mediation experience, your mediation journey, you just got your training, there's a few people that come to a mediation training. There's the people that want to take those skills and apply it to their current occupation, whether they're in HR, whether they're in social work, what have you. I love it. I love it. I want to see those skills brought to those industries as well. But then there's the other folks that come to a mediation training, and those folks are there to make a career and a life out of mediation. And for those of you that are looking to make a career and a life out of mediation, I would recommend joining MC3, looking into MC3 certification, because then it will put you in a completely different light. It's the gold standard for mediators, and it's something to aspire to. So thank you very much. And at this time, I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, so we have a question here from
Yeah,
Bob.
sure.
After completing training and volunteering for a period of time, are most mediators in private practice, or are there employment opportunities with mediation firms?
Well, there's a couple different things about that. So there are mediation firms or panels, if you will. I refer to them as the 5 families for a number of reasons. But you have JAMS, you have Judicate, you have ADR Services, a number of different organizations, and they bring people on. They bring mediators on all the time. Is it likely? No. More often than not, you will be a private practitioner. You will be on your own, and everything that comes along with that, right? And that's where we talk about the business of mediation. So be prepared to have those discussions and be prepared to go on that particular journey.
I just want to jump in for a moment. Thank you, Jason, for that. We again have another panelist that will talk in a bit more detail what it looks like to start a private practice. But as you hear from our panelists so far, it's really good to kind of go in a little bit of an orderly fashion so that you feel that your skill set and what you're about to do is solid before you start to open a private practice. But once again, we have a panelist that will talk in a bit more detail about that question. Back to Jason.
Okay, I think that's actually it for the questions. Are there any more questions that I may have missed? I don't think I did.
Either I talked really fast or or something. No questions. Hopefully I was substantive.
I want to thank Jason, though, for mentioning out our 2 sister organizations, the MC3, which he explained in wonderful detail so people understand our goal of taking mediators to the next level and considering them professionals, because we are. And second to KMC and their really good work with regards to children, and Jason as well. He's really getting out there and trying to promote our young people to consider any disputes that arise in the form of dialogue. As we all know, I used to tease with the schools, you know, better words than actions, and I mean negative actions. So thank you so much, Jason, for bringing that skill set to our young people.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next we go to Susan Guthrie. And Susan's going to talk a little bit about what some of you have questions on. How do you, as an attorney, explore the option of mediation? As I mentioned, she does quite a bit of work with the ABA. And so she's going to talk a little bit more about that option. Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you, Lucia. And I just want to say this is such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for having me here to be a part of this. What Christina and Brian and Jason have already shared is such valuable knowledge for people who are starting out. And if I could just say, I wish I'd had this back 10 years ago when I transitioned from a litigation practice to a mediative practice, because I had no idea what I was doing at that time. And to speak somewhat to what Jason was just saying about the power and the support of community, it was me sitting in a hallway, I think hanging my head after a particularly nasty litigation case where a colleague came over and said to me, you know, are you okay? And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And she said, have you thought about mediation? I didn't even know what she was talking about, to be honest, at that time. And she was a colleague who was at that time the president of the Connecticut Council for Non-Adversarial Divorce, and sort of picked me up, helped me get training. I took my first 40-hour 10 years ago and never looked back. And for me, you know, just as another aside, anytime I get to do anything with my SCMA family, it is such a thrill and a privilege and an honor for me, because SCMA is what, you know, helped me get my feet on the ground when, after 26 years of practicing in Connecticut, I moved to California, where I knew not a soul. I didn't know the law. I hadn't taken your lovely bar exam yet. I will never do that again. Or in any other state after taking that one. I will never, ever take a bar exam again. But, and then I met Terry Breer, who I don't think is here, and Jack Getz, and they brought me into SCMA. And within a year, I was co-mediating with a mediation group in San Diego. I knew California law because I learned from a learned colleague there who had been a family law attorney for years. And every opportunity that I had in California to establish my practice there came from SCMA, came from the people that I met. And then sadly, when I moved away, now 3 years ago, to Chicago, there was no way I was leaving behind my SCMA family, and I will get back there someday. So I cannot overemphasize the importance of your organizations in helping you get started. And I think Brian and Jason have very ably, you know, pointed out the connections that you will make in your organizations are just invaluable. So it's the people that you know. I mean, mediators are just the best people. They are the people you want to hang out with. And Lucia mentioned my membership in the ABA. And, you know, it's just maybe a bigger, you know, a bigger microcosm of the world of dispute resolution for me than SCMA. It's just nationwide or worldwide instead of Southern California, and growing, because I'm a Chicago member of SCMA and still beam in as regularly as I can. But, you know, I'm also a member of the family law litigation section. I just don't hang out with my litigation friends. I hang out with my mediators and my arbitrators and my dispute resolution professionals. So that transitioning for a practice for those who are practicing attorneys, as I mentioned, you know, I was 20 years of litigation practice at the time I started to make the transition. And I was in a lucky situation where I'd been practicing in one area for 20 some odd years. And was able to sort of start my practice and hang my shingle and just say, I'm going to take the mediation cases and give the litigation cases to my associates. So I was able to still, make that transition. But when everybody knows you as a litigator, it's very hard to reestablish yourself suddenly in this realm of now I'm the neutral. And can I point out, what's even harder is to change this mindset. It's hard to change everyone else's mindset about who you are and what you do. It's even harder to change your own. You go to law school for 3 years to get brainwashed into thinking about who's liable for everything. You can never go to a cocktail party and ever have a conversation again about, what happened in someone's life without thinking, gee, I wonder if you could sue that guy for that, because maybe it's just how we think, right? And then you get into the room to try and help people resolve their disputes. And you have to stop having advice and opinions and knowing how to get to resolution. You have to help them get there. So all of that, and every step of the way, I was supported by my organizations. I was supported in Connecticut by CCND. I was supported by in California by SCMA. And when I moved to Chicago, for me, it was, I had by that time become an online practitioner, which is a whole nother, aspect of practice, I think, for us today because of COVID. I knew I was going to stay an online practitioner, and I knew I wasn't going to take another bar exam. So I never opened an office in Illinois. I'm not a licensed attorney in Illinois, and I don't actually do much there professionally other than beam out around the world. But one thing that I did know, and that had started to happen for me, is very much what Brian was talking about. And I was so happy to hear him say that, we think as mediators, that's all we're going to do. We're going to mediate. And there are so many things that we can do with the knowledge and the skill set that we pull together as mediators. And he highlighted coaching, and I want to talk more to him about the curriculum. He said his colleague is pulling together. A huge part of my practice now is coaching, and largely in part because as I've started to grow, mainly through my ABA membership, a more nationwide and worldwide profile, people want to work with me, but I'm not comfortable mediating in cases or in places, in some instances where I'm not licensed to practice or I don't know the law well. So I coach, and I do all different kinds: negotiation coaching, legal coaching, high conflict resolution coaching. I come in as an expert witness. Those are all ways. I just have people who want to sign on and talk to me for a couple of hours about, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. I don't really know what to do now. I do 4 or 5 of those a week. They book them through my website. But it's actually, if you look at the bottom line at the end of my year, it's a big part of my bottom line at the end of the year is the people who are willing to pay for a couple of hours just to get my insights as to what they might do. And a large part of that for me and building that bigger profile was the ABA. And so I do want to just mention that I firmly believe that in our practice, it is important to be a member of your local organization. That is where you are going to get your, all of that input that is local. But if you want to really build a big presence, you can also belong to bigger organizations or larger. There's, for family law attorneys, there's APFM. I just went to the ABA, and I truly, went there because they have offices in Chicago and I was moving to Chicago. So just as an idea of how quickly you can build a network within an organization. And Jason really talked about the key to becoming, building that network. Join committees, get involved. Joining, it's like you join the gym and you expect that 20 pounds is just going to come off because you joined it. Doesn't work that way. You actually have to go to the gym. If you join an organization, do stuff, because that's how you meet the people. Join the committees, show up at the events, meet the people, talk to the people. As in, for my example, I joined the ABA DR section 3 years ago when I moved to Chicago. I'm now on the executive council for the section. I'm the membership officer, about to become the budget officer. I am one of the co-chairs of the mediation committee. I am one of the co-chairs for the Advanced Mediation Institute. I'm also on the faculty for that for 3 years. I've been published in all of the DR section magazines. I've been on their podcast. I only say that so that you can see that's happened in 3 years. Those are all opportunities that have been afforded to me by my membership and my willingness to get involved. And the same things happen. I was able to, when I was in Southern Cal, actually beamed in for the FMI this year, the Family Mediation Institute that Southern California Mediation Association does. There are a myriad of opportunities to really raise your profile, make those connections. You never know where that phone call is going to come from, where somebody's like, look, I'm mediating this case, but one of the parties really needs some help with negotiating. Self-advocacy is not their bailiwick. They really need some support in that area. And I think you'd be a good help for that. You know, you never know, or maybe you've never even thought about doing that, but that is something that you can build out. So, and then the other parts that we get to learn are the practice building side of things. We learn from each other in doing that. A huge part of my practice has now become training, both with Woody and training mediators to mediate and advance skills and all kinds of that. But I also do social media training, and I do how to build your website training and all of those things, how to build your profile, right? How to get out there and let people know who you are and what you do. And those are all things, you know, that are essential in the modern world that we live in the digital world that we live in and we're going forward into, if we want to get out there and build that profile and make sure that people know. And what Jason said, I thought was so valuable about, you know, getting on panels, speaking at conferences, having SCMA attached to your name. People will pick up the phone when I call someone and say, you know, I'm on the board with SCMA, or I'm, you know, on the executive council for the ABA. Most people are going to take my call. It's very helpful. And I've gotten to meet some amazing people and get some amazing opportunities. The other thing that Jason talked about, and I just wanted to highlight, is the joining of organizations as a way to build your profile and be part of something bigger. As you join different organizations, SCMA has initiatives that are doing things to help in the community throughout the year that will help the community with trainings or skill building. The ABA, through the ABA, I've had an opportunity to be on 2 task forces, international task forces right now. One is on ODR, that's going to set the regulations and standards, hopefully, as we go forward into a world where online dispute resolution is, you know, a part of our world. It's headed up by Colin Rule. I mean, pretty much the name in ODR. He's now one of my good friends because I've gotten to work with him through the ABA and other resources. And then we're also on a task force for online mediation training as we go forward. In fact, I want to mention to you all, we have a series of public forums every Friday for the next 4 weeks. I'm one of the hosts for next Friday, and that is focused on how online mediation and online mediation training are affecting the worlds of family law, community, workplace, and public policy. And it's to invite people who have opinions and who want to weigh in on these important issues before we put out our recommendations. I would love every person here to be able to come. I'll drop that into the chat, but you get a chance to be a part of something bigger than we are and something that's going to help our profession as it's moving forward. And so there's just, you know, a world and a wealth of opportunity. My mediation practice, just to close out on that, is, you know, it's entirely private practice. By building my profile, I've been able to build the practice to a point where I can select which clients I would like to take and refer out the others, which is a wonderful opportunity for me when I meet people like you all, and then if I know somebody who's looking for a mediator in California who does this, I've met you at an SCMA event, an ABA event, and I might have that opportunity to refer to you. And those are those opportunities that you're just not going to get sitting at your desk in your office. Unless you're sitting at your desk in your office like you might be right now on a Zoom call with a bunch of people who are in an organization. But making that transition from the litigation practice to a mediative practice, the only other bottom line to it, and every attorney that I know who's made this transition has said the same thing, and Woody and I do a couple times a year, 40 hours. And in our 40-hour training, we usually have a large number of attorneys at least, and every last one of them is desperate to get away from litigation, but is afraid to give it up because of the career, because of the money. And I will say that is the hardest part. And you have to realize that the business of mediation is a vastly different business than being an attorney. It is a completely different paradigm. And that's part of how you have to sort of change your mind. One thing I'll point out is in the ABA-DR section, next year, I'm going to be heading up a brand new initiative, which is a practice building institute. We do a mediation institute and an arbitration institute. We're now going to have a practice building institute, which is, well, this is a microcosm of what we hope to build out for that institute. And I'll tell you right now, if it's my choice, it's going to be in San Diego. So that's where I want to have it. And and our mediation institute will be in San Diego as well next year. So I hope to see you all there. Final note, just I see some students here who I have had an opportunity to work with. I would just love to say hi to Ashley and Andressa. It's wonderful to see you guys. And I want to point out, students get to be members of the ABA-DR section for free. Please join us. And you do not need to be an attorney to be a member of the American Bar Association Dispute Resolution section. We want people who are not. Somebody pointed out, and I think it was you, Brian, who said some of the best mediators are not attorneys. That is so true. Some of the worst mediators are attorneys. And it goes back to that mindset aspect. I can say that. So I, am very honored to be here with you all. I will drop some links in the chat for you all. And we do have, speaking of mentoring and networking, one of the events that we have coming up in the ABA-DR section, I can invite you all to. We're calling it Swipe Right for networking and mentoring. It's kind of a speed dating, mentoring, getting to know people. We're having that on May 13th. It's online. I'm going to be one of the hosts of that as the membership officer. And we'd love to have you join. It's a free event. Come and meet some people. Love to see you there. So, and I'm happy to answer questions for anyone.
Thank you, Susan. Take it away, Bouvier.
Thank you, Susan. I actually don't see any questions on the chat for Susan, but I think if you think of anything, I think we will have time at the end to ask any questions you may have for her.
Absolutely. Feel free or reach out to me. Thank you. I'll drop my my.
There is one question. It says how to find Swipe Right.
Oh, I'm going to put that in the chat right now. Here we go.
Great. And I'm just going to piggyback a little bit of what Susan said. I had the privilege of serving on a task force with her. She mentioned Terry Brer, and she's very active on our SCMA. And we have every year what's known as a Family Mediation Institute. The reason I mention that is because so many attorneys who are interested in family law are trying to figure out a way to parlay that into mediation. So take a look on our website. The one that we just had recently passed, but you can always prepare for next year. And it's a great way for those who practice family law to experiment a little bit on what it might be like to be a mediator in that field as well. So thank you so much, Susan. We always appreciate your wisdom. Very good. All right. Oh, there's one more for you. Susan's training on mediation in Zoom is fantastic. So there you go. And I actually picked it myself because I'm a newbie to all of this. So
I
thank
wanted
you
to
so
say
much.
thank you, Christina, and thank you, Lucia. SCMA members always get a 20% off on all of those programs. So if you want to take one, just use SCMA as the code. You'll get 20% off of any of the programs on my website, learntomediateonline.com. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Susan. And now we have Mark Lemke. And Mark is going to talk a little bit more about any kind of transition from one profession to another. And he also owns a private practice. So it's going to be very exciting to hear how he created that. So go ahead, Mark.
Right. Good morning, everyone. And what an incredibly impressive panel. I'm so honored to be a part of this. And thank you, Lucia, for putting this on. So for me, April 16 was my paid mediation anniversary. 5 years ago, April 16 was my first paid mediation case. That is an anniversary that I celebrate every year. And each year, doing better than the one before. As you mentioned, Lucia, I'm coming up on 2,500 mediations, and the combination of that 5-year anniversary and that 2,500 mediation milestone has really gotten me thinking and reflecting on how it is that I got here. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that. But the one thing that I want to emphasize to everyone who's here, to everyone who's thinking about making their transition into mediation, is to emphasize there is no one path into this profession. There is no, this is what you do, this is what you do next, and this is what you do after that. That's where SCMA really does play such a critical role. And you've heard that from several of the other panelists. You know, this can be a lonely profession. You know, mediators don't always talk to one another. And if you do have a private practice like my own, you know, I can't walk down the hall like I did back when I was practicing law to bounce an idea off of someone or to ask someone for a form. So that's where SCMA really does fill such a critical void. So as you mentioned, Lucia, yes, I am an attorney, but there's a big asterisk on that. You know, everyone knows what a criminal attorney is. There's the joke, of course, that every attorney is a criminal attorney. We all know what civil lawyers are, plaintiffs' lawyers, defense lawyers. I was none of those. I was a specific type of lawyer that almost nobody has heard of called insurance coverage counsel. A lot of people think that they know what insurance coverage counsel is, and they're like, oh yeah, insurance defense counsel. Well, those are two different words. So two different things. My role was not to represent the plaintiff. My role was not to represent the defendant. My role was to represent the multinational, multi-billion-dollar insurance company. So how's that for doing the Lord's work? But it really was phenomenal practice for the transition into mediation. And I say that because frequently I would put in a full day at the office, and most of my clients were located in Europe. So obviously they were a few hours ahead of time. So I put in what I thought was a perfectly full day at the office, go home late at night, feel very accomplished. And then my phone would start to ring at around 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the calls usually went something like this. We're going to send you a file. Future tense, we are going to send you a file. The mediation's on Thursday, or the mediation's next week. We need you to get completely up to speed on this file that we haven't sent you yet. We're going to give you an amount of money, and we need you to go in there and shut this case down, or at least shut it down with regard to this particular insured. So in a very short period of time, I had to get completely up to speed on the case. Much of what it is that I did was complex litigation. So there might be 20 parties, 50 parties, 100 parties. I really needed to figure out for my insured or my insureds, if there was more than one, what was their potential exposure? What was it going to cost to get them to trial? What were the range of likely outcomes? What am I hearing from plaintiff's counsel as to just how bad it's going to be for my insureds? What am I hearing from defense counsel about how they're going to completely defense the case and not have to charge anything? What kind of litigation budgets are we getting that are saying just how little money it's going to take for them to go to trial and to hire experts? And, you know, frankly, do I believe any of it? Because everybody's got an agenda. My agenda was not to drink the Kool-Aid from any of the parties. My agenda was to take the big picture view and on that basis, assess the risk, assess the costs, and decide what does it make sense to do? And how am I going to sell this when the insurance company, and anyone here who's worked with insurance company knows, when the insurance company isn't giving me nearly enough money? So that's how it is that I was practicing. And as coverage counsel, when I went to a mediation, I had a lot of nerve. I remember one particular very prominent mediator who said to me in the last case that I ever hired him on, "You're coverage counsel. I know what you're going to say. You don't have to tell me. Just sit there, and when I need money from you, then I'll ask you for it." Yeah, that's very humbling. That's the kind of thing that sticks with you. And again, that's the kind of thing that a mediator got to say to me one time before I never hired that mediator again. And that, PS, for those of you who are looking to hire mediators, that's the kind of thing that each of you is going to need to take into account. You've already heard from several of the panelists, you're going to make mistakes. Of course you are. You're going to learn things. You're going to rub someone the wrong way. And all it's going to take is one case with a particular attorney to make you or to break you with that particular attorney, with that particular firm. If they're involved in an association, members of associations talk. So, you really do want to make sure that you've got your stuff down before you're putting your name out there and before you're asking people to hire you. So when it came to me being very nervy as coverage counsel, oftentimes because I wasn't representing the plaintiff, I wasn't representing a defendant, I was representing the person who was bringing money. And for most people, that made me popular. Oftentimes, I could ask to join the plaintiff's room. Defense counsel couldn't ask to do that. They'd never be admitted in a million years. But suddenly, the person who's going to be funding the settlement asks to have a chat with the plaintiff. And oftentimes, I got that opportunity. So much so that for a lot of the mediators, not the one that I alluded to earlier, who shall of course remain nameless, but for a lot of mediators, especially in the complex cases, they got to know me and they would say, you know what, there are 3 other parties like yours, 6 other parties like yours, 10 other parties like yours. If you can settle out that block of 3 or 6 or 10 and bring in X amount of money, I'll cut your insured a really good deal. So all of a sudden, hang on now, I've been deputized as a co-mediator. Now, the mediator who was making an insane amount of money for their time would never have said, I'm going to have Lemke co-mediating, but that's essentially what I was doing. And after I did that a few times, I got to thinking, well, hang on, I hired this mediator. I selected that mediator. I paid that mediator. And this mediator thinks that I'm good enough that they're essentially going to charge for my time. They're going to put their name on my work. And after doing that a few times, I decided, you know what, maybe I just decide to cut out the middle person. Maybe I decide to do this for myself. That is a very different way of coming to mediation than a lot of folks. And that's why I say every single one of us has our own story. So for any of you who is hearing, this is how it is that you become a mediator, I'm here to tell you, maybe, very possibly not. We each forge our own path. So I want to encourage every single one of you who has an interest to give this a try. In 2011, I began my transition to becoming a full-time neutral, and I wanted to get some experience, and I wanted to learn and make my mistakes outside of anybody who would potentially be hiring me. So this is where I'm going to say something a little bit controversial. I went to a DERPA provider. Christina talked a little bit about DERPA providers, and a lot of what it is that they handle are community mediations, small claims, landlord, tenant, and unlawful detainer, that sort of thing. These are not the people who are going to be hiring you. They're just not. These are small claims. They can't afford to pay you. They're not interested in paying you. They haven't even been able to hire an attorney. So the likelihood that they're going to be hiring a mediator on top of that, very low. But perfect for gaining a lot of experience, perfect for learning how people work, perfect for learning, I'm going to say how much people are lying to you, because in mediation, you're getting lied to constantly. You kind of have to get used to that. I see Lucia laughing. That's the kind of thing that you do inside when somebody tells you what they're never going to take, what they're never going to pay. We'll see. You learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about the process. I think that it was Jason who was saying you learn a lot about the cases that you do and the cases that you do not want to mediate. Maybe you meet some clients along the way, but mostly it's about building your skill set and learning who you are as a mediator and what it is that you're able to bring to our profession, because every single one of us brings something different. So 2011 began the transition with DERPA, not through a court-connected panel. And part of that as well is, not only did I not want to make my mistakes among some of the attorneys that I would later be asking to hiring me, but also I'm here to tell you that when you volunteer, there are abuses. You are going to see people who are going to come to you again and again and again and again, looking for free. And you're going to have a decision to make. One thing that I ran into back when the LA Superior Court had their panel prior to 2013 is mediators who I showed up for mediation as coverage counsel, and the mediator recognized one of the attorneys and said, nope, that's it. I only do one freebie per attorney, so y'all are going to have to go home now. Well, my client had flown in to be there. I had driven to be there. We'd all prepared. We'd all gotten the money together. And now the mediator saying, no, I'm not going to mediate your case. So figure that out. Figure out how it is that you're going to keep people from abusing your time and becoming repeat non-clients, freebie clients. Because at the end of the day, this is an investment. And you are a professional and you do deserve to be paid for your time. One of the things that so often mediators who've fallen into, I think that it was called the black hole of volunteering, will say is how soul crushing, how hugely, hugely frustrating it can be when every single person in the room is getting paid except you. The lawyers are getting paid. They're getting paid very handsomely. The plaintiff is getting paid at the end of the day if the case settles. The defendant is saving a bunch of money and not having to continue paying their lawyer and avoiding the risk of a verdict coming down in a particular way. So really, this is a financial transaction for every single person there, except for you as the volunteer mediator. And that can be very tough, especially if people think that you're good enough that they want to keep coming back, but not good enough that they want to pay you. So you need to figure out how it is that you're going to address that. And that is plug time. That's one of the things that talking to other mediators through SCMA can be so helpful. You can ask through the professional development groups. You can ask through the soirees that Lucia puts on. You can ask many of the friends for life that you will meet through this organization, hey, how did you handle this? You can ask at the relaunching mentorship program, listen, this is a problem I'm having. What should I do? So this is your sounding board. This is how you learn what's worked for other people. This is where you get a variety of different approaches. Sadly, I did not have that at the time. I didn't come upon SCMA until much later. So I had a decision to make. I had gone to this DERPA program. I had gotten a fair amount of experience. I'd given myself a certain period of time. This is how long that I want to invest in this to see, am I any good? I know what I think about my skill set. I know how hard I'm going to work, but, what are my resolution rates? Am I able to solve cases that I never thought that I was going to be able to resolve? Are people happy with me? Are people enjoying the process? But I also had a gut check moment, because when I was thinking about who the mediators were that I was hiring back when I was practicing law, I didn't look like that. And I really want to emphasize that for just a second, because this is courage time for every single one of you who may be thinking the same thing. When you think about a mediator, and this can be our ingrained implicit bias, we think about what a mediator looks like, and does that person look like me? Just taking a look at the panel, and this was not something to my knowledge that was done intentionally. You see a tremendous diversity in this profession. I wish that our profession was as diverse as this panel. It isn't just yet. We're still working on that. But I'm here to tell you, there is a place for every single one of you, no matter, the number of years of experience, no matter what your background is, your training is, your education is, no matter whether you think that you're good enough or not. Sometimes it is a have faith, and faith will be given to you, or fake it till you make it, if you will. I didn't come to this as an older professional. I transitioned to mediation when I was in my mid-30s. I am here to tell you, humbling moment. I have been mistaken for my own assistant. I had a client who got in my face after a while and said, this is all well and good, this chit chat, but can you go get the mediator? Because, we're on the clock here. And I got to have the discussion about, hey, that Lemke mediation, I'm the Lemke, that would be me. And that was a very difficult morning. From there on in, the case did ultimately settle. But again, I am not what, and certainly was not what people necessarily think of. I wasn't a trial lawyer. I wasn't a retired judge. I didn't have RET after my name. And, a lot of the mediators that I used were retired judges. So how do I fit in? Part of that for me is, okay, I don't have RET after my name. Maybe it'd be good enough if I had LLM. Maybe it'd be good enough if I got that master's degree that several of the other panelists have talked about. I'm here to tell you, and I'm not going to say that this has been everyone's experience, but I'm here to tell you that is some of the best money I have ever spent. And I heard what Dr. Jarrett was saying, Dominguez Hill's charges, and I'm here to tell you, I paid quite a bit more than that. So if you're not sure, then maybe thinking about Dominguez Hill's, you may get better value for money. I enrolled instead in the master's program at the Strauss Institute for Dispute Resolution at Pepperdine Law School. At the time, I didn't know about Dominguez Hill's program. At the time, at the risk of aging myself, not that there's anything wrong with that. At the time, USC did not have a program. That came later as well. So I chose the Strauss Institute. I learned an incredible amount about resolving cases. And I was really struck thinking back during classes, thinking back during assignments. These are the things that I'm learning and getting my master's degree. How come all the mediators that I've been paying all these big bucks to, how come they didn't know some of this stuff? Some of those lousy mediators that I was paying insane amounts of money to. How come I'm hearing this for the first time? How come I'm seeing this put into practice for the first time? And that's where I think that Dr. Jarrett was saying was it the practical-matic? Was that your term, sir?
Yeah, that was actually David Chandler's term. He just died recently, by the way. He's from the University of Hawaii. David Chandler, just a quick shout out. He coined the term pracademic, meaning
academic.
Skills, yeah.
Love that.
Yeah,
love that. But I really was struck when I was getting my master's degree training, and that was a question that was asked during the chat earlier. What can you get out of this? I fashioned for myself a pracademic education. I was getting the theory, and I really wanted to focus on getting the practice as well. It was also about who I met. And it sounds like, again, this is very much what it is that we've heard from one of our other panelists. It was very much the networking. Through the Strauss Institute, I learned about SCMA. I remember attending my very first annual conference back when we were doing these in person. I then ascended to the board and then obviously was fortunate enough to be selected as president. I've learned about the International Academy of Mediators. For some of you, that may be an organization that interests you as well. For those of you who are familiar with ABOTA, which is an invitation-only organization for trial lawyers, IAM is similarly exclusive and invitation-only for mediators, for those of you who are interested. I met a lot of commercial mediators, and here to tell you, as a student, I was not a threat. They would give me an opportunity to shadow them that I am quite confident they would not have given me if I had already hung out my shingle and I was chasing clients. A lot of them, in fact, took it as a compliment that I would want to learn from them, and a lot of them used the fact that I was in the room, even if I was a potted plant in the back of the room along the wall saying nothing and taking notes. A lot of them would point to me and say, look how good I am. I've got somebody who's going to the, X-ranked school, who is a fellow over there, who's watching me, who's learning from me because I'm such a hotshot mediator. That was an opportunity, again, I would not have had outside of the master's program. So enormous, enormous value. Also met, and we're going to have a program with him later on through the American Institute of Mediation. I met Lee J. Berman, who taught me a lot about the business of mediation. Here to tell you, I've learned so many things. I met so many great people, but I have seen a lot of great mediators who have not succeeded in the business of mediation because they don't have the business skills. I've even heard some people say, gosh, the people who are capable of being great mediators are not capable of being even halfway decent business people. It's just such a remarkably different skill set. Bringing people to resolution is not the same as being entrepreneurial. Every time that I have the pleasure of attending a program with Susan Guthrie, I'm just struck by her remarkable entrepreneurial spirit, beyond the fact that she always has such wonderful substantive things to say. But I can't think of too many people who are anywhere near her level of accomplishment and who have really, grabbed on with both hands the opportunities that they have received and the opportunities, more importantly, that they have made for themselves. So really, while there's no one path, absolutely nothing wrong with following a titan such as Susan Guthrie and trying in any small way that you can to emulate what it is that she has done. And I'm here to tell you, it can be done. Even if you're not a Susan Guthrie, that is an unfair standard for any of us. It can be done. Okay, that then brings us to how long is this going to take? When we talk about, in particular, when we talk about the transition, when we talk about mediators who have not succeeded for whatever reason, this is the number one thing that I would point to, is people who are not providing themselves enough of a runway. One of the things that kills me is when somebody says to me, and I've heard this a number of times by former mediators, I've got plenty of savings. I am ready to give this my all. I know it's going to take a while. I don't need to be a full-time mediator for 3 months. I've got enough of a runway that I don't need to be practicing full-time for 3 months. As long as I can get my practice up and running in that time, as long as I'm full-time as a mediator in that time, then no problem. For some people, maybe you can go 0 to 60 in 3 months. What I have heard, I had an opportunity during a break in a commercial mediation by a mediator that I was able to shadow, that it took her 7 years. 7 years. On average, when I talk to mediators who've made it, not the ones who haven't, the ones who have made it and come out the other side, I usually hear anything between 7 years to 9 years. Now, that's a lot of savings. That's where, if you've got a spouse, you're going to need to have a chat with that spouse about whether or not your budget is able to do that, whether they are able to carry some of the bills until such time as you're able to make it. I'm even thinking about a case that I had last year where it took me 6 months to get paid. Not too many jobs that you do that you can afford to not get paid for 6 months. So, yes, getting a mediation booked is great. Yes, it being a paying client is great. Yes, setting up that invoice feels fantastic. But if you're not getting paid for 6 months, for a lot of folks, that can be a problem. So, I would just encourage each of you to be real with yourself about that. When I transitioned, I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have a spouse. I didn't have kids. I had a car that was paid for. Thankfully, I had done well enough in law that I paid off my student loans, and I was willing to live in a fairly modest apartment in the Valley. And keeping that overhead very low was critically important to me having the runway to be able to succeed. I checked in with the former president of this organization when a couple of years in, I wasn't doing as well as I thought that I should be. And this individual is a very prominent mediator in our field, in addition to having been a former president of this fine organization. And he asked me, "Did you make more than $20,000 your first year?" "Oh, of course, way more than 20. Come on, please, yes." And he said, "Then you're doing amazingly. You're judging yourself too harshly. You're doing great." This person said in his own voice, "I am at the top of the profession. I am doing phenomenally. I'm associated with this panel. I'm a former president of the SCMA. My first year, about 20,000. So be prepared. Be prepared. And this, when we talk about the black hole of volunteering, this is the kind of thing to think about, is how long can you afford to do that? For me, For me, getting on panels was all about validation. It was all about confidence. It was all about, if somebody looks at my resume or looks at my website, I actually don't have one, is it going to be obvious to them that I'm a mediator? Is it going to be obvious to them that I'm an employment mediator specialist? So I looked for as many things as I could do to reflect that on me, to give me that patina. I volunteered for the longest time for the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, DCBA, here in LA County. I continue to volunteer through the Los Angeles County Bar Association's Mediation and Arbitration Service, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the California Courts of Appeal, the United States Central District, the Mediation Center of Los Angeles. I serve as a temporary judge and judicial settlement officer for Los Angeles County Superior Court. I also am on faculty with a couple of area law schools. I have a master's degree in dispute resolution, and yes, I am MC3 certified. If that ain't enough for you, you know, Mr. or Mrs. or et cetera client, that's okay. You know, it's enough for other clients. And that's how it is that I've been able to string together my business. Let me just briefly check in. I know that we have a time limit. Am I going over time?
Well, you have a couple of questions, Mark, so maybe we'll let Bouvier read those to you.
Let's transition to questions. Absolutely. Please, Bouvier.
Sure. So here, the first one I saw was you noted you don't have a website. Could you briefly speak on that decision?
Absolutely. So when I went through the mentorship program, one of the things that the mentorship program that SCMA offers tells you to do is these are all of the steps. These are all the things that you need. And then you're able to bring what you have to mentorship program sessions, and everybody can take a look at it. You can get other people's eyes and see, you know, even if you think this is a great website, what do other people think? You know, what do other people think does not show confidence, does not show that you are at the top of your craft, does not show, you know, that you know what you're doing because one of your links is dead. So that's some of the value that you get through the mentorship program. For me, I wanted a website that I could take anywhere and have hosted anywhere. And most of the folks out there who do web design use proprietary design language precisely to keep you from being able to take it to a different provider to host. And I have heard a few mediators who have been held hostage, who, you know, it's kind of like the first one's always free. You get a year of free hosting, and then the second year there's an amount that you get charged. And then the year after that, it goes up, and the year after that, it goes way up, especially if they think you can pay. So for me, I didn't want to do that. I hired somebody who told me that they were not going to use a proprietary design language, and then sure enough, they did. Also, there was a Ninth Circuit Court opinion that came up not too long ago that dealt with accessibility in websites. And I do employment cases in particular, and the last thing that I want is to get sued for not being sufficiently accessible to folks who have disabilities. That would not be good branding. So I have a domain. It points to my LinkedIn. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm busy enough that I just kind of haven't gone back to, you know, sorting out my website. I think that I see that Susan has a hand up probably to say that this is not considered best practices, but maybe she wants to add something else.
Yeah, well, just a counterpoint, and I do think for an experienced practitioner who already has a full book of clients and a good reputation, it probably is much less important. But in the digital world that we are living in, and certainly going forward, I do think it can be very helpful to have a website. You are 100% correct, Mark. One of the reasons I did not like having a website was I paid 10 grand for my first one, and it was all that proprietary crap, excuse my French. But, you know, when I migrated from Connecticut to California, I didn't get my website. I now use GoDaddy's website builder. I pay $150 a year for my websites, and I build them myself. I have 6 active websites right now. I can go into the back end and keep them up to date myself every day and in all different ways. And the vast majority of those coaching clients, the people who book an hour or two with me, they do that all through those websites. I have a course on how to build a website about how easy it is to do with the current website builder. So if you are starting a practice, I would say, I think it's a good idea to have an attractive, interactive website that is sort of your, who you are, what you do, and why you're special about doing, what sets you apart. People are looking for a feeling. I'm a family mediator. People are looking to be taken care of. They're afraid. They think it's going to cost a fortune to get divorced, et cetera. So those are the types of things I hone in on. But counterpoint, just a different opinion.
It's an important opinion. And for anyone here who ever has the privilege of serving on a panel with Susan Guthrie, here's what you say whenever she disagrees with you. Susan is right. Susan is right. She is. This is what worked for me. The vast majority of the time, what Susan has said is going to work for other people. I'm an anomaly. I get that. I own that.
I'm going to jump in and first of all say thank you to our panelists. We're kind of running down to just a few minutes. So what I would like to say is if any panelists would like to stay beyond our particular time frame, you're welcome to do so. So if anybody in our group or the guests have any more questions, we're available for that. I just want to say one last comment. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mark because he is our president of SCMA. My final comment is part of what SCMA does is educate. We need to educate the attorneys and let them know that this is a valuable skill and that actually we can work in partnership with them. Second, we need to educate the community. So many people don't even know that this is an option to help them resolve disputes. So we encourage you to keep coming to our webinars, our classes, our seminars. We're trying our best to give you the verbiage to let people know that mediation is a good thing, that finding ways to resolve your conflicts is a very positive direction. And our panelists have given you a variety of ways to get involved and to learn a little bit more about that. So Mark, I'm going to let you say a few comments and then back to me just for a minute.
Cool. Yeah, echoing, obviously, huge thanks to all of our panelists. Thanks as well to our sponsor, Simon Mediation. For more information on their services, go to transformativemediation.com. Wanted to share a little bit about some of the exciting programs that SCMA is going to be offering shortly, and a huge thanks. I think I saw that Jennifer Johnston-Toronto was here. She's one of our events co-chairs. I don't know if Richard Earhart, who is the other of our events co-chairs and will be president of SCMA next year, is here. But huge thanks to both of them for giving me what I'm about to say. So on May 1, Lucia and I will be co-hosting one of the professional development groups that Jason Harper talked about, and it is right up the alley of those of you who are attending today. That is Making Money as a Mediator. So SCMA currently has 7 different PDGs, professional development groups. That's a new one that Lucia and I are doing this year. So thanks to Lucia for her leadership on that. Next, on May 12th, Jason Harper is going to be reviving our very popular How I Made It series. You heard me say that we've all had a different journey. So on May 12, you'll be able to hear former SCMA President Jason Harper sharing a little bit about his journey. Then on May 27, Marvin Whistler, board member, is going to be talking about the intersection between therapy and mediation. We also have events that we're going to be announcing shortly. Lee J. Berman, who I mentioned earlier, he's going to be giving us a fantastic seminar on bracketing. And then for those of you who know, Ken Cloak. I don't even know what Ken Cloak is going to be speaking to, but the mere fact that Ken Cloak is going to be speaking, you're going to want to attend. And then on November 6th, Save the Date is going to be our annual conference. So we hope to see each of you there. You will be contacted after the seminar with a few things. One, you will be provided with a sheet that you can use to track the fact that you attended this training when you get certified by MC3. Their website again is mc3certified.org. The fact that you are here helps get you a little bit closer to getting Gold Star certification status with MC3 as well. Want to thank all of our members who are here, and in particular, our sustaining members. SCMA is building out a library of all of our online programming, and that is a member benefit for sustaining members in particular. Just one way that we're trying to provide that value to sustaining members of SCMA, and we'll have more information on that shortly. Huge thanks to our panelists, huge thanks to each of you. Thanks again to Simon Mediation, and hopefully you'll consider joining SCMA, and we look forward to seeing you at another event soon.
And just to end, and we ended on time, Bouvier is probably thrilled. I want to thank our staff, Bouvier and Taisha. As I mentioned, we couldn't do this seminar without them, our tech-savvy dynamic duo. To Mark, again, for your leadership. To all our panelists, to Christina, Brian, Jason, Susan, and Mark for consenting to be here. I feel so honored that you all said yes. I also feel very honored that Dan Simon said yes. So please check out Simon Mediation. As he mentioned, he has a class coming up. So if you were ever curious about what is transformative mediation, now's your opportunity. And most important, I want to thank all of you, our guests, our participants. By having you all here, it just reminds SCMA that this style of programming appeals to you all. This particular program was not only available to SCA members, but to the public. And as I mentioned earlier, part of our goal is education. So the more that you share with others the importance and the value of mediation, the more that we can move our particular craft or art form to the professional level. So thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend. Bye.